Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Sat here today again with the lovely Saira Salmon, and we are going for a morning tea. So welcome back. Thank you so much for coming back online and having our wonderful chats. I always,
It's a pleasure, a pleasure. I,
yeah,
I love it. I love the way we talk. It just roams all over the place, doesn't it?
that it does absolutely. Yeah, I find it a very, very enlightening and magical time whenever we connect. Really, so we we definitely unravel a lot of stuff. So yeah. So basically today, um, we kind of came up with the topic of just like going into the Nephilim and the Nephilim 2.0, and processing a bit of the history within that and the backlog, and also kind of pinpointing how and where it's kind of been coming up within the fields recently. Not directly recently, because I think since the last time we sat down and had a chat, it was really erupting and coming up to the surface.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've kind of moved through a healing and integrative process with that as well. But it's always good to kind of tie up the loose ends and
And to get our understanding of them straight, because a lot of, I mean, there's a huge amount, if you look on YouTube and places like that, there's a lot of people talking about them,
mhm,
but most of it is a kind of they're conflated stories, and the reality is there are kind of two versions of the Nephilim, and most of what's around only speaks to the current narrative of history, which is it's very brief. It only goes back, about, well, where are we, 2000 now? It probably goes back between 5 and 7,000 years. When you look at our written history, it really goes back to, starts with the Sumerian times. And the Nephilim, the first iteration of the Nephilim goes back way, way, way beyond that. We're going back, I think it's something like 950,000 years, when the second seeding of humanity, we're the third seeding, I think I might have mentioned this before, but the second seeding of humanity was on the planet. And that's when the Nephilim first appeared. So what is talked about in the Bible, which is where most people initially find the referencing to the Nephilim, or in the books of Enoch, um, is really taking an old story and bringing it forwards and then mixing it up with a newer version of what's going on. So it's getting that straight, that actually understanding Nephilim, what I call 1.0, Nephilim 2.0, and the impacts that particularly Nephilim 2.0 has had on us. Because
mm,
one's an unofficial version of an Anunnaki human hybrid, and the other is an official version of an Anunnaki human hybrid.
mhm,
Um, so as I say, the unofficial version really was a project of the Anunnaki, who at that time were sharing parts of the earth with humans. There wasn't, I mean, they weren't friends to humans, but we weren't under the kind of warfare, spiritual warfare that we are now.
mm.
But they saw themselves very much as being the rulers of Earth, because they were much more aggressive, and that's their templating, is control and power and domination and things like that. But because they have this digressed DNA, and they were aware that the DNA was degenerating, and we have this amazing DNA. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it is, um, yeah, it's a magnificent DNA at so many levels. So they were wanting to kind of like splice together um, what they parts of our DNA with theirs, or undertake breeding programs in order to try and regenerate those aspects of their DNA that were beginning to degrade badly. So, being who they were, they started to kidnap and rape and pillage, and it was all done without consent. They just took what they thought they wanted, and they created the Nephilim. Um, and people sort of say, which is a human Anunnaki hybrid. And the Nephilim then came to dominate the humans because, again, they have this much more aggressive makeup. So they were causing problems on the earth. But it was also done without consent. So enter the Elohim, who are a density 3 race, who have been tasked by the Lyrans. They are of Lyran heritage themselves anyway, but by the Lyran founders, with the overseeing of what's called the Tyrannusium experiment, of which we are Tyrannusium 2 here on Earth. Tyrannusium 1 was on Tara, the 5D planet Tara. So they were overseeing the second seeding of humanity on Earth. All this problem with the Nephilim came in, which was not only, I mean, it wasn't only about just, this kind of domination and power and control and things. It was they were messing up our DNA template. They were messing around with our, our genetic inheritance, and they didn't have the authority to do that, and they didn't have the permission to do that. And our templating has a very specific purpose to it. We've been given this amazing DNA for a very specific purpose. So it was also interfering with that. So in come the Elohim and say, enough, no more. The Anunnaki, say, piss off, sort of thing. And effectively war ensued. And it was devastating. It was called the 1,000 Years' War. I'm not quite sure why, because it actually went on for about 12,000 years. I'm sorry, 1,200 years. But it's called the 1,000 Years' War anyway. And it devastated Earth. And a lot of humanity were taken off the Earth at that time. They were removed to other planets in order to save them because of what was, the wipeout that was happening at planetary level. A lot went underground into inner Earth, so they went into inner Earth. And when the fog of war cleared, as it were, effectively the Elohim came out, shall we say, the winners, but Earth was devastated. And humanity and the Nephilim were effectively, anything remaining on the Earth was virtually wiped out. Now, at that point, the Elohim banished any remaining Nephilim from the Earth, and any that had been taken off and saved by the Anunnaki, which the Anunnaki had done, were forbidden from ever coming back into Earth. So, but the Anunnaki still had this need to regenerate their templating. And over the next sort of 100,000 years or so, while Earth herself was recovering from what had been done to it, plans were put in place for the third seeding of humanity on Earth to bring and reseed humanity again. And at the same time, negotiations between the Anunnaki and the Elohim took place as to what could be done about an official version of that. Now, this split the Anunnaki because the majority of the Anunnaki saw the need for their digressed template to be rehabilitated. There was a big chunk of the Anunnaki who is kind of like, we're okay the way we are. We don't need anybody's help. We're magnificent. We're wonderful. We're masters of the universe, all this sort of thing. So the Anunnaki themselves were split on this. It's, that's important to remember. The second seeding of humanity started about 800,000 years ago. And during the time of, it's a hugely complex thing to do with cloister races coming in, which are the Mardi Gras lines coming in initially, and then you've got the various root races of Earth humanity coming in. So over, hundreds of thousands of years, we kind of get towards what you might call the more recent history of Earth. And the agreement which came to be called the Treaty of El Anu between the Elohim and the Anunnaki, the Treaty of El Anu. This agreement was come to that a hybrid version of the Anunnaki, so effectively Nephilim 2.0, but a higher iteration of it, because it has been would be overseen by the angelic races, and it would be a proper hybridization, bringing together a balancing of the two templates, rather than the rather degenerate hybridization that had happened first time round. So this experiment was overseen by the Elohim, and the Melchizedek consciousness, which is a blue ray consciousness. It's part of the Emerald Order, blue ray streams of consciousness. The Melchizedek consciousness agreed to participate, to be the hybrid, the angelic part of the DNA, and that, from the Guardian perspective, from the Emerald Order perspective, the hope was that this would rehabilitate the Seraphim. Don't forget the Anunnaki of a Seraphim heritage. That the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki templating, their Seraphim templating, and the Anunnaki with this input would be able to be regenerated back to its 12-strand potential, and effectively the Anunnaki race would come back into the fold, as it were. And the Anunnaki who wanted to participate in this experiment agreed to bioregenesis as a race, and they agreed to how this hybridization was going to be carried out. The aspect that didn't want it broke off and became called the Anunnaki resistance, and they joined up with Dracos and just basically have been an absolute pain in the butt, and been, the war they've waged against angelic humanity on Earth ever since has been relentless, absolutely relentless. So, that was the fallout, that there was a good side to it and then a fallout from it. Now, the seeding of the hybrid human Anunnaki, which was called the Anu Melchizedek race, which is, it's a real, real mouthful, the Anu Melchizedek race. That was initially seeded into Atlantis about 70-odd thousand years ago, something like that. And war immediately ensued, something called the Nephilim Wars immediately ensued, as the resistance Anunnaki, with their Draco pals, immediately tried to take it out. And it's about this time that the Nephilim reversal grid was put in order to try and twist the Nephilim, the Anunnaki aspect, or the reptilian aspect of this joint templating, to twist and make the reptilian aspect dominate. That was the initial impulse behind the Nephilim reversal grid, was to play up the reptilian genetics, to broadcast in such a way that the reptilian genetics dominated the angelic genetics. And all of their machinations over time worked, because what happened was, with the Nephilim reversal grid going, and with infiltration into Atlantis by the Anunnaki resistance, an element of the Anu Melchizedeks became digressed. They became turned, effectively. And there are all sorts of mechanisms, and we see a lot of them still in play today, sexual depravity and status and power and control, and all of these mechanisms just, they have the same old playbook. They roll out again and again and again. The consequence of it was that Atlantis, which was a very high society, it was a very high civilization, as this infiltration and the control of the Anu Melchizedek's kind of clamped down within Atlantis. Atlantis became more and more problematic until we have, you know, the taking apart of Atlantis. I mean, Atlantis came to pieces effectively over several catastrophes. The final one being a final blowing up of it, but the Atlantean cataclysm, which took place, this one took place, I think it was the second one. There's about 30,000 years BC, some 28,000 years BC, something like that. It took out a huge part of the Atlantean continent, leaving scattered islands. And those that could be saved went to the Americas, or they came to Egypt, because there was a high civilization in Egypt with the Egyptians, a lot of them, the Seres Egyptians, who had a seraphim lineage to them.
Yeah.
So you've got this very high spiritual civilization in Egypt, and the Anu Melchizedek, who was still online, as it were, still with the experiment, moved to Egypt, and the fallen Anu Melchizedek, which we'll call now Nephilim 2.0. So these are the fallen Anu Melchizedek, had control of Atlantis, and it ended up blowing it up. Once Atlantis had fallen, the fallen Anu Melchizedek, along with the Anunnaki, I'm try and get the detail of this right, because it is quite complex. It's all written down on stuff I've got in the Lost Wisdom Library for people who really want the detailing of it. But you had this great movement over, and that's when Sumeria took place. We have the beginning of the Sumerian chronicles. We have the beginning of the Anunnaki, the history that the Anunnaki have given us from that time. They then, once they got their Sumerian base, after, you know, the takedown of Atlantis and the devastation that caused, once they got their Sumerian base sorted out, they then began to infiltrate into Egypt, and eventually took down the Egyptian civilization, and digressed the Egyptian civilization, twisted their high spirituality and things like that. So the fallen Anu Melchizedeks, the Nephilim 2.0, moved into positions of power with the Anunnaki resistance. What we would know in the Anunnaki stories, the Anunnaki chronicles, is the Enlils and the Enkis and, you know, all of these of this world. That's when the whole power base of what we see in the modern day world started to take shape. But it was on the back of it was on the back of really the attempt of the Guardian races to really help to rehabilitate the Anunnaki, and it all went very badly wrong, basically.
And just to jump in on that as well, through the repetition of hybridization and mixed breeding,
yeah,
caused such an impact to our own DNA template, which then disconnected the ability to access interdimensional information and access to the Christos memory, and that template. So effectively, due to that, our own ability to remember got us by the short and curlies, where we couldn't remember who we were. Fell into the belief of the Anunnaki resistance, which was sitting as the seats of power.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another aspect to this that I didn't mention, which was at the time that the agreement, the Treaty of El Anu, was put in place, those who wouldn't sign up to it, the Anunnaki who wouldn't sign up to it, the higher guardians placed within their DNA templating, within the morphogenetic fields of their of the Anunnaki resistance, what's known as the Templar seal or the 666 seal. Now it goes in at about this, it's there at about the 6th dimensional field, from what people, people who see and work with these things have said to me. But it also relates to, and I think this is something that's often overlooked, 666 is the carbon element.
Yeah.
We are carbon bodies. And the next move, the movement of ascension and the movement of coming back into our full multidimensionality is taking us from carbon through into a silicon or a silicate or a crystalline matrix body. So the 666 seal was designed to keep those whose consciousness was at a relatively low level within a carbon-based body. So the Anunnaki resistance effectively infected the Anu Melchizedeks, or a large proportion of the Anu Melchizedeks with it, who then became, it's probably easier to talk of them as the Templar Melchizedeks. They then became this digressed version of the Anu Melchizedek, Nephilim 2.0, as I call them, also called the Templar Melchizedeks. And then you have the blue flame Melchizedeks, Anu Melchizedeks, which were the ones that didn't digress. And on the whole, the blue flame Anu Melchizedek beings that were left on the planet went into inner earth at about the time of the whole Egyptian catastrophe. So there are Anu Melchizedeks who aren't fallen. It gets incredibly complicated because we have Anunnaki who are in bioregenesis, who are not the bad guys, and we have Anunnaki who are very, very definitely the bad guys. And so, and trying to not lump everybody in one race as being bad, but we do have to understand that there are shades within all of this.
It's really interesting as well that you brought that up, because a lot of the time I'm finding myself going into the blue flame lineage and having to rework and remodel a lot of the landscape that's kind of connected to that consciousness. And because there is a kind of genetic connection, therefore a collective logos that kind of feeds to and from between the sides, we do often find that we're having to kind of restore and repair a lot of the fallen Anu Melchizedek, Nephilim 2.0 sides of things, kind of bleed through as a kind of distortion or a kind of virus, if you will, into the blue flame Melchizedek line. So it is very jumbled, but then being able to kind of isolate out the trauma and isolate out the digression, you're able to synthesize both sides of it in the process.
And the sad fact is that most of the human race has become infected at some level or other by both the Templar seal. I mean, a lot of the human race has the Templar seal in it because it's been passed on. And with the reptilian, some aspect of the reptilian consciousness, because there's been thousands upon thousands of years now of forced breeding programs, of hybridization programs, of deliberate sort of kidnapping and hunting down of particularly the Margi Grail line lineages, human lineages, but with all of it. And it's been a very deliberate war on human consciousness, a very deliberate game plan that's being played out to bring down totally and to totally digress and degenerate human DNA so that it can't be regenerated. It's taken fully away from what it was. And that has always been, when the Anunnaki were very first, millions upon millions of years ago, the Anunnaki were first produced. It was as in vengeance against the creation of the angelic templating. The angelic DNA. So Yeah, I mean, this war on human consciousness, this war on humanity has been going on a really, really, really long time.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a spiritual war as much as it's anything physical. It really is a spiritual war. It's a war against the angelic races. It's a war against the Christos consciousness.
Hmm. 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 Absolutely.
You know, and the Christos consciousness is that 12th dimensional frequency that we hold, not a realized potential at this moment on the earth, but we have that potential in our DNA currently, and they want to cut us off as they've cut themselves off from it. They want to cut us off from it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. It's really interesting because as you're kind of just all through the process of as you're talking, I'm just being shown um the memory fields and the information synthesizing, and I can actually feel it pass through my field as we're speaking. And I mentioned to you before that just before the show is that a lot of this kind of the treaties have been coming up into my awareness recently, in which it's been kind of working to reprocess and working to kind of redirect and correct really. Now, I think there's also what I'd like to kind of go back into within this as well is the Taran aspect of this.
Mhm.
Okay, so where do you want to kind of start with that?
So, well, Tara is humanity 1.0. So Tara is fifth dimensional Earth. And this is where you've kind of got to really be able to get your head around the whole multidimensionality,
Mm,
multidimensional sort of universal structures and things like that.
mhm,
So effectively it's future Earth. It's the risen, shall we say, the risen version of Earth that has made it to 5D called Tara, but it's also, but Earth is actually a fallen aspect of Tara
mhm.
because it's kind of like the histories unfold from the top down. So it's kind of like we're not the beginning, we're the end.
Yeah.
So Tara, so Earth is actually fallen Tara.
Mhm,
Um, is probably a better way of looking at it, and we usually look at it the other way.
mhm.
And one of the reasons humanity is on Earth is to rescue the lost souls of Tara that fell into the third dimension. A lot of us are here, you know, we're picking up soul fragments,
Mhm,
knowingly or unknowingly. The whole time we're here, we're picking up our own soul fragments from Taran timelines, as well as rehabilitating
yeah.
others from the Christos races.
Mhm,
But Tara plays out, the Taran histories play out very similar to the Earth histories. It is almost, it's a repeating cycle, but at a lower level. The Earth history is a repeating cycle, but at a lower level. And we have hit the buffers where we are now. It's kind of like, you know, people talk about the end times. This is the end times. It's kind of like enough, no more. We we sort this out once and for all at this moment, and this is why what we're playing for is so huge. But
mhm.
as I say, it actually began before Tara. It began with the creation of the angelic human race, the creation of the Anunnaki, and this invasion that from outside our time matrix that took advantage of all of that confusion and everything going on. So there's quite a mix going on. But we'll leave that to one side for another day because it can get very complicated. And
Yeah.
come back to Tara. So we have 5D Tara, you know, a beautiful jewel, and the angelic human race.
Mhm,
So there are other Christos races, but the angelic human race was very deliberately created. Our particular templating, the Diamond Sun templating, um, was created and was seeded on the planet Tara.
mhm.
Now we got the Anunnaki, who were, you know, sort of in the galaxy at that time. They had also been created at more or less the same time, and their stated intention was to take down this experiment, that what's called the Tyrannusium experiment,
Mm,
um, which is the seeding of these race lines, and it was done through 12 different race lines, etc., etc. Again, there's quite a complex way of it working out. And there were two main continents on Tara. The one that was seeded was called, I think I'm right in saying, it's Eden. Yeah, and you see the Anunnaki chronicles really kind of replicating these stories, but bringing them to Earth. The Taran race lines sort of split into two directions over many millions of years. You had race lines that coalesced into what's called the Alanians, which were a much more technologically minded people, more, I suppose in today's terms, we call them more go-getters. You know, they were the kind of type A personalities. They wanted to take charge, they wanted to be in control. And then you had I think the name was Lemanians. It's very, very similar to Lemurians, but I think initially it was the Lemanians. It will be in all the information sheets I've got, which were much gentler, much more spiritual, much more inward, non-materialistic in their outlook. So you had this splitting really initially from these 12 race lines. It kind of split into two major parties, as it were, and the one started to dominate the other because one was much gentler, much less aggressive. And so the Lemanians, with the help of the Elohim who are overseeing this this seeding, moved to the other continent, which was called Mu, the other continent on the planet, to continue their evolution, to a very large degree unhindered by what was happening with the Alanians. Now, the Alanians have been infiltrated, you know, here we go again, infiltrated by Anunnaki, who were really playing up, again, all of these traits of status and hierarchy and patriarchy. And, you know, it's the same playbook. As I said earlier, it's the same playbook again and again and again. And it started a long, long time ago on a different planet, just brought down to Earth. And they ended up, long story short, they ended up blowing up Tara. The Temple of the Solar Initiates became the dominating force on the Alanian continent, and they used crystalline technology, and they pushed enormous amounts of power through their planetary grid using the crystalline technology and basically blew it up. Now, you know, one could say they were incited to it by the Anunnaki, whatever. They blew it up, and you know, a vast amount of Tara's morphogenetic grid and, you know, a vast amount of souls basically fell. I mean, they lost frequency. The planet didn't tear apart, but was very badly damaged, and a great chunk of her morphogenetic field fell into the next density down, which is the one that we're in, which takes in dimensions 1, 2, and 3. And coalesced into those aspects of the morphogenetic field, coalesced into what we see as our solar system, which Earth obviously is part of it. Earth has integrated into her a big chunk of Tara's morphogenetic field. So, you know, we're the fallen aspect of Tara. This is where, you know, a huge chunk of the Taran templating fell into a lower density, and Earth is the fallen aspect of Tara, effectively. So the whole thing, I mean, there were two choices. One was you try and heal and bring Tara back together, you know, raise the whole morphogenetic fields again so that Tara could heal and become whole. Or the other was you left Tara the way it was and patch it up, you know, and let things progress on from there. Now, the Guardian races don't abandon souls.
Mm.
So it's almost like there was no choice about it. A plan was put in place, which is called the Covenant of Paliador.
Mm.
And this is where we get, you know, the Paliadorian Covenant, the Paliadorian races and things like that from. A plan was put in place to rescue the lost souls of Tara and to rescue fallen Tara. And we are part of that plan, effectively. So we come to Dionysium 2, the second seeding of humanity in the very, very dense planes of our multidimensional time matrix. So after Earth had settled, you know, many, many, many millions of years, Earth had settled and started to take shape. Plans were put in place to heal the templating, because in all of this, you know, the templating had become very damaged. The morphogenetic fields have become very damaged. And it's a very complex plan. It took me quite a long time to get my head around why the Paleodorian plan for the seeding of Earth was the way it was. And it's immensely complex to do with the seeding of cloister races, to activate certain strands, and then seeding of the root races connected to those cloister races before the next cloister race came in. And activated the next strand, and then brought its root race in, and then, you know, so on. And when we get to the Nephilim timelines on the second seeding of Earth, because the first seeding got taken out, effectively wiped out through war, the electric wars. And they came back and they started the second seeding. The second seeding had got to the fifth cloister race before the 1,000-year war took place, because of the Nephilim interference in the templating. So you can start to maybe understand from that why the Guardian races are, you know, our templating, this precious templating that we have, is very special for all sorts of reasons, not least because there is the Covenant of Paliador in place, and effectively, like, there's one of the military things, isn't it? We leave no man behind. That's the Guardian philosophy. No soul. They have promised, they have vowed that every soul will be saved. And when they say that, you know, we think of the angelic races, but when they say that, the reality is they also mean the fallen races. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's epic, isn't it? It's absolutely epic.
Yeah, definitely is an epic. I mean, all through that, whilst you were talking, I felt so much shift in my own energy system. It was almost like as if I was having a healing as well, whilst you were kind of disclosing information, which was incredible. It really is.
Yeah, wonderful.
Power of
This is why I think it's so important that we have some understanding of this. This has very deliberately been taken from us, because when we start to see the big picture of history, not just at the Earth level, we take it out and out and out and see the bigger picture of what's going on. You know, the cosmic picture or the galactic picture of what's going on. Our perspective on who we are, what we're here to do, you know, what's going on, why it's going on, is really different. And you can see, you know, from what played out on Tara, you know, there's echoes of the same cycles playing out here on planet Earth. Only it's called Atlantean this time round, and it's called Lemuria, you know, and on from there.
But really, that's basically Eden and Mu.
Yeah.
So it's incredible, isn't it? How it just gets translated down into different Earth and holds similar names. But
and you see, you know, like you see with the Nephilim story, you see the story of Nephilim 1.0 and 2.0 sort of pulled into one mishmash. And given little snippets within the Bible and within the books of Enoch, but it really relates to a much longer timeline. The same thing with the Atlantean and the Lemurian stories.
Absolutely. And I think it's also really interesting. You've got some people that are fully capable of like reading the history and getting it under their belt with the type of templating that they can do, or you get the other type that has the impact, the physical impact that will kind of relate to all of these timelines and histories that they then have
Yeah.
to heal. So you've
Yeah.
got a kind of correlation, a backwards and forwards. And it really is, it comes back to the fact that we are all in this together and we can't do this job without each other,
Yeah.
which I
uh,
find really, really fascinating.
yeah.
And, if there's any kind of consolation within that, is not to kind of take the burden to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. We're
which
all here to help each other.
it is that, isn't it?
And we all hold, a part of the jigsaw puzzle. Not one of us is complete in ourselves, as it were.
Mm,
We're all helping each other,
mm.
complete each other, as it were.
Oh, absolutely.
So, that reaching out of the hand across the divide is so important.
Oh, yeah. It
So
really is, isn't
important.
it? And
Yeah.
it's, yeah, when we kind of sit there and challenge ourselves, saying, no, I should be doing this all by myself, blah, 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 which is fundamentally grandiose. It is uh,
Mm.
a kind of a state of egotism in and
Yeah.
of itself, because it still holds layers of separation in the fact that we think that we are able to kind of manage everything in our own capacities without having other people come in to catalyze us to then find that truth
Mhm.
somewhere down the line. It's yeah, it's quite amazing,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
And I will just say, for anyone who is reaching it, there's so many layers of subtlety, and so many. It's a very complex story. I have simplified things. I do. In order to make them understandable, and to get them out of my mouth in everyday words, I have really simplified things. So if somebody is aware, it's a lot more complex than that. Yeah, but
yeah,
it's more important that the big picture is understood.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because and I think once the base timeline is kind of understood, even my God, um, understood, and then you can start to pinpoint and pick out where your role is within all of that.
Yeah.
What have you
Yeah.
done within it? And then start to heal and synthesize and pull yourself back from these different timelines
Yeah.
about building back your own energy to embody in the now, basically.
Yeah. 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 Because, as I say, we've hit this point now where it's being sorted out. The guardian races, the founder races, and great consciousnesses from beyond our time matrix that are coming in now to sort of sort this out once and for all, because this was not meant to be a warring matrix.
No.
This was meant to be a matrix, or a universe, or whatever wording you want to use, where the Christos current was dominant,
Mm,
where unity consciousness was dominant. And because of the digression of consciousness, and maybe we'll talk about the Weezer, and how it really happened, because the stories that we have from within our time matrix sort of say that it started at the very top, in the density 4, where the Lyran civilization effectively took hold, were first seeded.
mm,
The first Gold Order, Emerald Order, and Amethyst Order
mm,
races were first seeded.
mhm,
And then we had this digression in some of the Seraphim races, and um,
mm,
that digression then led to war, the Lyran Wars, that then led to this diaspora and led to da 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 da. The reality is, I mentioned about these intruders who broke into,
mhm,
invaded our universe, our time matrix from without it. They seeded that digression of consciousness,
mhm,
and once it took hold, um, they invaded full scale, because they got allies they could call on to help them,
mhm,
but they came from without. They were a phantom they are a fallen
Mm.
matrix, a fallen universe that
Mm.
is seeking, or is seeking to bring into full fall another universe and everything within it in order to yeah, be battery power for them, be energy for them, be food for them.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting as well because what I feel with it is almost like that Weason system was trying to take out the mother line of it,
Yeah,
right? So where did that mother line come in? So if we're looking outside of our time matrix, it does actually sit within a different, I guess, in like a kind of different universe,
yeah,
a different structure in it of itself.
yeah,
So from that, it's about kind of, and this is where I feel like this is where like the kind of Aurora network and the Aurora platforms kind of
yes,
come into play as well with the
yes,
restoring of that. It's being able to re-anchor that mother
yeah,
grace line
yeah.
into our
Because we our Milky Way galaxy or our time matrix or whatever, our mother universe time matrix, whatever you want to call it. The wording is it means different things to different people, and I find myself using as many words as I can so that maybe one will chime with something that, oh, now I get it, or that makes I have people who don't like the word dimension,
really.
but frequency is fine. But to me they're the same thing.
They are,
But
yeah.
it's so semantics can get in the way of
Mm,
clearly communicating. And some people don't like God, but source or unity consciousness
mm,
or whatever works. So I say to anybody watching, please don't get too hung up on the terminology. Go with the intent or the picture
yeah,
that,
yeah.
that is being painted behind it, because we really haven't settled into how best to talk about this. So yeah, what was I saying? I've taken myself totally off track there.
I was
What
saying
you do?
before that we were talking about how the Weasons came in.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think this is like
Andromeda, our mother matrix. Yeah,
Mother Matrix Andromeda. I
yeah,
feel like this is a whole topic in and of itself because a lot of my work over the past few months has just been focusing
yeah,
on restoring that
yeah,
Mother Matrix and anchoring the Aurora platform
yeah,
into the
yeah,
Earth grids. And
yeah,
I mean, it's quite complex as well because it doesn't just go through a grid system, but it also interweaves through the different stargates and gate systems. So
yeah,
it's kind of creating a feedback loop, which is then opening a platform in which we've got a kind of bioregenesis program running to rehabilitate. Hello. To rehabilitate the my little dog's just going to say hello.
Oh, sweet pie. Mm.
So to rehabilitate the consciousness, we've had to have this anchor in. But what is this for? Actually, what is this for in the purpose? And this is fundamentally we elevate our consciousness through that, repair and restore the mind. But this is also bringing an access point for the Emerald Order to return
Yeah.
into form as a frequency band. So it starts off as a kind of channel, and then his breath really smells. Oh, that was nasty. Serious, your breath is a lethal weapon. I might set you on the wheezins. Um, so, oh my God. So through that fundamental is when this starting off as a frequency band or as a channel, this then slowly moves to bridge the higher self to come back in as
Yeah,
the kind of the highest aspect of you to reemerge and take control of the form,
yeah,
the
yeah,
way that it should be in
yeah.
alignment with God.
It's bringing us back into our original divine blueprint, the
Yeah,
original Christos blueprint,
yeah, exactly.
a fully activated template and DNA.
Yeah,
That we are, we're not this very digressed form, and the Anunnaki were very responsible for that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
we're not this very shut down, very
Mm,
contracted version of who we're meant to be. I mean, we're a
mm,
fraction of what we're capable of being.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. But this is the beauty of it is like the self-discovery and the process of kind of finding out who we are
Yeah.
and accelerating all of those abilities to blossom the way
Yeah.
that God intended for us to be.
Yeah. And in all fairness, we were at one point we did fully inhabit this template.
Mhm.
You know, I've heard people sort of say, oh, we're moving into things that we've never known before. And we're going to be calling on aspects of ourselves that we've never had access to before. We have.
Mhm.
We,
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
we've just forgotten, and I think that's even worse than at least the moving forwards is a great adventure, but we've had this massive fall
Yeah.
and lost almost everything in it, and we're having to claw our way back
Mhm.
just to be who we're meant to be.
Absolutely. And that in and of itself is such a big theme of healing is the fall of man consciousness,
Yeah.
fall of humanity.
Mm,
Even when the fields get very chaotic, something new has been unlocked, which then creates loads of pain and fear and shock and
mm,
all kinds of stuff. That then incites a level of deep-seated fear of the
yeah.
imprint, the primal, like the imprints of separation from when we kind of drop from our conscious awareness and we can't remember
Mm,
what we're doing, and then it goes down into a state of kind of shadow, if you will.
yeah.
And that descent is where we're reworking everything to elevate ourselves back up again.
Yeah.
It's scary.
And I think it's worth because I mean our history is just one of trauma and catastrophe and enslavement and being beaten down and beaten down and beaten down.
Mhm, mhm.
I think it's worth saying that actually everything's on the rise again.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything is on the rise again. So actually, awful as the history is, and important as it is to understand it, because we have to release all of this out of our fields, out of the planetary fields and out of our own fields,
Yeah.
um, in order to be able to rise, as it were.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
that's behind us. That's behind us now.
it is
So
behind.
there is everything to play for, and you know, hope is. I mean, it's not just a concept now. It's very, very real. The reworking, the rebuilding, the opening up of everything, the expansion of everything is very real now, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and this is it. It's like it's coming, and the more we're kind of grounding this awareness and the knowing that we're going up, we can then start to reposition our belief systems around it to then
Yeah,
spin us on an upward spiral. So we're
yeah.
strong in
And
ourselves.
the fallen races who have been causing such chaos
Mm.
are being held to account. You've seen it, haven't you?
Yeah, I saw it absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, they are being held to account. Um, that everything they've put in place is being dismantled here. It just takes time. I mean, I think the chaos here was so much more than was realized. It just takes time to unpick all of the nests and the reversals and the
Yeah.
and it will come. Give it time. It will come, and we'll start to see it shift big time.
Yes,
And they're
absolutely.
just, what little remains here is absolutely desperate at the moment, and that's what we're seeing it
Mm.
at the 3D level.
Mhm.
The whole nastiness at the 3D level is the absolute desperation of it's like a dying fly, sort of kicking its legs frantically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which probably wasn't a very good way of saying it. I
Love.
sometimes wonder where these pictures come from.
I mean, they're giving you truth, aren't they? Love so.
Yeah.
Well, that was an amazing show. I really, really enjoyed that thoroughly. We went so deep in that. I feel like it will be great to go into the wheeze and stuff next time.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And I know at
a
some
big
point
old deep dive on that.
you want to do the
Yeah.
whole Gnostic Sophia demiurge thing.
My God, there's so much that I want to go
Yeah,
to. I really do because all of these topics that we're kind of touching base on is everything that's coming up in the fields at the moment. So to have that base understanding of what maybe I'm seeing or what I'm healing can then transfer into the group field for who's kind of intercepting and those that are kind of receiving this information. It
yeah,
does. It comes to you in a way that will then trigger and catalyze all of the history within your own fields for you to then unlock and process.
Mm.
So, and having like a kind of base understanding of the timeline, even as basic as you wanted to put it, or not, this then sets a foundation and a precedent for a memory field to kind of to sequence. So it then, this is the process of it, is gaining back the memories. So within those memories, you're then releasing the trauma from those memories, or you're releasing the kind of heaviness from within it, so you can then embody yourself once again. Yeah. So yeah, it's cool.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so thank you so much. It was amazing. I really, really enjoyed this today, and I will definitely be having you back on. I'm going to try and make you come back on maybe next week or the week after. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You don't really have to twist my arm. I just love talking about sharing this stuff. I
Absolutely,
really do.
yeah. And this is the joy of it. So, should we just do a quick outro there? And I'm going to leave all of your details in the box below. What's the name of your website again?
It's sairasalmon.com.
Brilliant. Okay.
And there's the on there you find the Lost Wisdom Library, which is I write up as much as I get the time to. I write up, sort of sheets and sheets of stuff on different aspects. This one's the one on the methylene. Yeah, so that's for a small fee you can access all that, and it's being added to monthly. Then there's the sort of Grail Wisdom and the Life Alchemy membership groups, which are where we talk about this and we take it further and into the ascension mechanics and stuff like this. So all sorts. It's all on the website. I'm not going to go into it all.
Do a real quick share on that one there. So here is the website. We've got the Lost Wisdom Library, and you've got all of these different things as well. So
yeah. And the Starseed Report. The Starseed Report is where I start with an awful lot of people, because it gives you your galactic heritage effectively. The Starseed Report is just identifying what ray of energy, frequency of energy, primary frequency of energy your soul came in on, and the point of origin of your soul in this particular time matrix. What galactic constellation or whatever, and that can often that will often give you your perspective as well on things, because if you were born in as a 6D Syrian, you'll very much be looking at everything from the 6D level. A lot beyond that probably won't chime with you, and so on and so forth. So it can be, my sourcing, as it were, has come out of the founder fields. I'm something called a blueprinter, which is not really a point of origin. It's a type of templating. And I think, because I've often wondered, well, why am I seeing things from this really, really high level when others are only seeing 9 dimensions or 7 dimensions or whatever it might be? And I think it's this point of origin where the soul comes into the universe that helps to explain that.
I find with it, it's also about kind of unlocking a lot of the history behind it. So there's always going to be a kind of tracing back to see how far back you kind of go.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's almost next to impossible to kind of find that origin. So yeah, but no, wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay then. So I will see you again very soon. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, and yeah, thank you everybody listening.
Yeah, thank you all, guys. Lots of love. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Bye.